Hey guys, Big Swear Road to Roota coming to you on August 2nd. In my timeline, we're like a month away, little over a month from chaos hitting. I'm not saying exactly on 9/11 things will all of a sudden it's over and bingo bango. I'm saying 9/11 is probably the day that the computers get hung up on each other, as I talked about in the second video with Dick Allgire's explanation on his remote viewing of the US dollar. And I just applied it to that time frame based on the graph that he drew. Go check out that both the timeline videos. What I want to talk about today is a couple things. The way this will all shake out will be different. It'll be different because cryptocurrencies have been introduced into the picture. Before it was just gold and silver. That was always what we were going to go back to for the last 110 years since we've been on the fiat money standard, created by the Fed in 1913, created by the people who were trying to save their ass because of the gold that was found in the Grand Canyon. But the crash was going to be very different. It would have crashed, and then we would have used the gold in the Grand Canyon and around the world to back a new monetary system. Not even back, truthfully. There's no way people saying that China is going to back their currency is the stupidest thing I ever heard. The only reason they would have to back a currency is if people don't trust the government anymore. So if you don't trust the government, you're not gonna fall for a backed type of situation. So no, there won't be no backing. If it is fully redeemable, yeah, I can see that happening. But that's just trading a commodity, right? So no, there's going to be no backing of gold to any currency because people will lose faith. And if you just back a currency without it being fully redeemable, whereas you walk into your bank and you trade that dollar bill or yuan or whatever you got for the equivalent amount of gold, that's the only way that would work. And then people at the beginning would just go in and pull their gold out. So it just won't work. Just won't work. And if someone does say, oh, we're going to back the currency, it handcuffs the people and they lie, basically. They're going to lie. It's a trust me situation and they lie. So back then it was very different. David Morgan had an awesome presentation that I'm going to play for you right now. And it was analyzing a 1981 movie called Rollover. And before the cryptos, this is the way, and before massive computer market rigging, this is the way it was going to go down. Check this one out.
Then the dollar will collapse. Whereupon there'll be a lot of jawboning by the president, and that won't work. Then they'll go to selling gold, and that won't work either. Then they'll have to go to capital controls, freeze foreign assets, stop any money from going in or out, and that will be the end of all the markets. That'll really be the finish. Then you'll see a worldwide depression that'll make the...
Oh, man.
The 1930s look like a kindergarten. In 2 months, you'll have bread lines in Detroit, riots in Pittsburgh. In 6 months, you'll see grass right over Rodeo Drive, and Michigan Boulevard, and Fifth Avenue, and I won't have done it, Hub. You will. All because you tried to stop a movement that couldn't be stopped anyway. Listen to me, Hub. Money, capital, has a life of its own. It's a force of nature, like gravity, like the oceans. It flows where it wants to flow. This whole thing with the Arabs and gold is inevitable. We're just going with the tide. The only question is whether you want to let it go like an unguided missile and raise hell, or whether you want to keep it in the hands of responsible people. Believe me, Hub, the dollar will hold. Believe me. The system will be fine, providing nobody panics.
So the scene starts off with a trading room in a major New York bank. And the main trader screams out and says, everybody hang up the phone and listen very carefully. And the scenario goes like this. Listen, everybody. The Arabs yanked all of their money out of our bank, and it's not just us, it's across the board.
That means every bank in the country out there is going to be struggling for liquidity, trying to cover those cash withdrawals. We're dumping everything. Treasury bills, bonds, Fannie Mae's, commercial papers, we want it all sold. Fed funds, euro dollars, borrow whatever you can find up to 200 million. Foreign exchange, no positions. Bullion, grab what you can get. All right, let's hit it. And pray.
And then pandemonium takes place, and all these trades start going off, and it's just crazy in the trading room. And of course, you got to realize that this same scenario is taking place all throughout New York City, the financial capital of the world, and of course London and Zurich and everywhere else. And everybody's selling everything they can to put it into dollars so that they can pay back the Arabs what they owe them, right? Well, as this is unfolding, one of the traders comes up to the desk and starts explaining.
Stock market's off 75 points. The dollar's appreciated 10% and moving down. They even yanked the euro dollar deposits that weren't due. First New York is practically down the tubes and gold just went over 2,000.
But tonight that'll be cheap.
And he turns around and he picks up the phone and he calls his wife.
I want you to listen, and listen very carefully. As soon as you hang up, I want you to go to the closet, take a suitcase, and get to the bank.
And then it cuts. And it shows a scene outside of a bank in Manhattan. And the banker is taking bundles of dollar bills and throwing them outside the bank. And there's people scrambling and screaming all over. And then it cuts again and it shows a newscaster. And he says, this scene outside of Manhattan Bank took place all over the world.
Last night, demonstrators burned American currency in front of the White House, and attempts to put out the fires led to a confrontation with police. Every hour, from every corner of the globe, there are new reports of outraged crowds demanding action. A bankrupt world seems to be teetering on the very edge of anarchy.
And then that's basically the end of the scene. But the point is that something like that could happen inadvertently. It doesn't take all of the money coming out of the bank. In fact, in today's market being so topsy-turvy and so skittish, you might see a major withdrawal of maybe 1% of a fund somewhere that has a compounding effect, especially in an over-leveraged market, which we've been in for so long. And I think the best way to wrap this up is the derivatives market. When you've got one bank in the United States that basically has a derivative exposure that's in the trillions of dollars, I mean, it basically is so vulnerable to something like this taking place that most people don't even, one, realize that it exists, or two, what the implications are. But Warren Buffett, arguably one of the best investors in modern times, has said that it's financial mass destruction. That's what these derivatives represent. I believe he's correct.
Bullion, grab what you can get.
So awesome posting by David, good friend of mine, really good guy. He spoke up in Spokane with me, and he knows what's going on. He's known it for a long time, and bravo, David, for this. But remember, this is a scenario, probably a most likely scenario had what transpired in this movie. Had it happened, it would have happened in real life, because we didn't have cryptocurrencies. So, and there wasn't all that much computer trading, high frequency trade, stuff like that at all in the 1980s. The only people who were computer trading were these new quant kids and the Fed with Alan Greenspan's program. So yeah, it would have looked like that. Now, what happens fast forward to today, which is what, 40 years later, 40 years of computer programming. And here's the kind of thing that we run up against. Goldman Sachs Quant Fund sees fund clients will see massive speed improvement after a $100 million trading system upgrade. So Goldman has been able to increase their trading speed a fraction of a cent, a fraction of a second, just a millifraction of a second. Because all they want to do is be faster than the next guy to front run all trades. It is insane what is going on. Trillions of dollars trading back and forth at massive speeds. Massive speeds. Not slow speeds. Massive speeds and massive quantities, just like in the cryptocurrencies. Now, this is what exactly, this is the digital form of what David Morgan described. And this is in the second video of the timeline. I talk about Dick Allgire's session where he did of the US dollar and what is going to happen to it. Dick has yet to fully understand what he's done, but I'll tell him. I told him already, but this is not some far off day in the future. Even on his time graph, as I point out in the video, this is probably in 2019. And that's another point of reference for the September 11th date. But just look, I'm going to play a little of this and look what Dick writes. And it is literally what was described in David's presentation, except on the electronic money side. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple screens. They interpreted it completely different, but here's my interpretation. And this is Dick, and he was seeing these computer screens and the velocity of money and big displays. Now remember, he's viewing the U.S. dollar, and it didn't have a time on it. It didn't have any other than what you interpret, and they interpret a lot of chaos for the U.S. dollar. I see it as much bigger than that. It's clear that these are all computer screens dealing in derivatives. Remember, the U.S. dollar is not treasury bonds, is not the cash hand, is not the cash at the bank. The vast majority of trading that goes on in the US dollar, in all of it, is derivative trading. Derivatives of foreign exchange derivatives. Trillions of, Jamie Dimon says they put out $5 trillion a day out of their Florida office. That's all derivative trading. So that's how they control all currencies on planet Earth, is through derivatives. And so he has this thing. It's like there's mayhem, there's pandemonium, everything's going crazy. Now I'm saying this is September 11th. This is what's going to happen on September 11th, 2019. The craziness within the computer. It's all about computers that Alan Greenspan invented in the 60s and 70s. This is how I bring it back to Road to Roota. And then this one really got me. And Dick was explaining it, how these computers are just crashing into each other. And all the algorithms are jamming against each other. You can't get anything done, and it's just not working. And factions fighting each other. Computers at war. Mainframe computers at war. Now, they interpreted it differently than I do. I see this as September 11th, this is what's going to happen. Mainframe computers at war, splitting commands, microsecond algorithms, the freeze up internally within the control system. Within the Fed, the U.S. Treasury, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, China, Russia, everybody attacking everybody. Like I said, it most likely from a click of a mouse from whoever's got that control. Is it still Alan Greenspan? Potentially. But it can happen real fast. And this is exactly what would happen. So that's a good description. Watch that second part of the timeline again. Good description of what David Morgan describes what happened in 1981. This is what would happen today. And it would be the freezing of the computer systems, computer trading models, all fighting each other to get out of the system or to rig the system, but they're all competing against each other, and it basically locks everything up. And there is no way to unwind something like that. And it was planned not to be unwound. That's the key that everybody doesn't seem to realize. It is the planned destruction of the old system. It needs to be done to get rid of the bad guys and to start fresh. So keep an eye out for that. Really, somebody sent me this today. In Trump's speech, he says something. He reads it from the teleprompter, and he says something, and there's a lady right here behind Trump in white. Watch what she does when she hears Trump says something about hidden gold. And he was talking about the power industry in the United States, but there's something more here. Watch Trump's face and watch the lady behind him.
But we're going to stay the way we have it.
It'll refresh me.
We've ended the war on American energy, and we're putting our coal mines.
I need
Oh, are you kidding?
your help to
A
add
Bernie
your
ad?
name to our petition to demand
Goodbye,
that
Bernie.
Mitch
Miners back to work, and our steel workers back to work, and
All
our
right,
oil
listen up.
companies back to work. And, we've learned over the last 3 years the incredible gold that we're sitting on top of in this country. We're very lucky.
The incredible gold we're sitting on top of in this country. He's referring to like the reserves in the ground, not of gold, but look right before he even looks at the teleprompter to make sure he says it right, and he pauses right before it, and then the lady next to her said, "Oh, he said gold." Check it out again.
Windmills. If a windmill is within 2 miles of your house is practically worthless. They make noise, they're intermittent, they kill your bird. And, we've learned over the last 3 years the incredible gold that we're sitting on top of in this country. We're very lucky. We're now the largest energy producer in the entire...
The incredible gold we're sitting on top of. The incredible gold we're sitting on top of. He's starting to sound like Bix Weir. June 19th, 1912, New York Times, tell of vast riches in the Grand Canyon. Billions and billions of ounces of gold. Billions, with a B. F.D. Watson, who has been conducting operations for the Chicago concern, has come out of Lee's Ferry to report to his principals and make further arrangements to carry on the work. He declares that when the whole field has been developed, the supply of gold in the world will have been increased by billions. Billions, with a B. He goes on, I know that it will be difficult to comprehend that I have a correct conception of the wealth that is buried in the banks of the Colorado Canyon, he says, but I can demonstrate every statement I make to be absolutely true, and that my chief shortcoming is an inability to comprehend the vastness of the riches that lie along the great stream. After this was published, boom, Federal Reserve was created, boom, Woodrow Wilson locks up the Grand Canyon into a national park. And I've been there. I've seen the steamship. I've seen where they're ripping the mountains apart, and now you're not even allowed to go there. But there was more. Look at the end of the article. Up the Colorado River, 150 miles, there's another great outcropping of the silt, which is being developed by a concern largely financed out of this city and Denver. This extends for more than 18 miles of gold. And then it dips down and has been traced only once more before the deposit at Lee's Ferry is again found. It is believed that other deposits can be tapped in Marble Canyon, if that is ever made accessible. Above the Colorado River, 150 miles, that puts it above the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam was built to flood out that area, make sure nobody got their hands on the gold. You want to know what's beneath the Hoover Dam? That big conspiracy stuff? It's gold, my friends. Lots and lots and lots of gold. Now, how many ounces of gold were there in the world back then? Very few. I think it was 230 million ounces of gold were ever mined in early 1900. The United States had 30 million ounces of gold. It had been coined for use as money. 30 million with an M. Million. And remember, gold was money. Gold and silver were the only money of the United States. 30 million. And they're talking about finding billions and billions and billions of ounces. Billions and billions and billions of ounces. Watch Trump's face. Watch the lady behind him, too.
And, we've learned over the last 3 years the incredible gold that we're sitting on top of in this country. We're very lucky.
Did he say
We're
gold?
now the largest energy producer.
The incredible gold we've been sitting on in this country. I love it. And there's Roota, who finds the golden sunlight and finds the golden, all the colored flowers. And you guys know the Roota story. If you don't, go to the beginning, the video discovering the road to Roota. This comes directly from the Federal Reserve Bank. One of the key things in the Federal Reserve Bank comic, besides finding the colored flowers and it had to be lit by gold and all that stuff, you guys know that story, but is the Wishes and Rainbow or the Road to Roota Teacher's Guide. In the Teacher's Guide, they talk about how can we distribute money when the old money fails. Here's Roota's distribution. It says what to do right here. Okay, why is Pebbleton's traditional distribution structure abandoned in the case of the colored flowers? The unusual nature of the new resource, along with the overwhelming disproportion between supply and demand, created politically sensitive situation. The mayor, who is at first perfectly willing to take one of the flowers for himself, realizes from the clamor for flowers that whatever distribution method is chosen is likely to dissatisfy certain elements of society. Even if he declares public ownership and sharing, he may be accused of asserting too much governmental control. The demand of the color-starved people for the flowers seems both urgent and insatiable. The mayor therefore assigns Roota the unenviable task of deciding upon a method of distribution that will satisfy everyone. Roota's distribution system is ingenious. By allocating an allocation system that is based on seniority, Roota establishes goodwill with an important segment of society. Meanwhile, those who must wait to receive flowers are comforted by the knowledge that their turn will come. Finally, Roota's decision satisfies her personal desire to add color to her grandmother's life. After all, her grandmother, who first told her of the color land and who dreams of seeing softly tilted petals, will be one of the earliest recipients of flowers. That was Arthur Burns, was Greenspan's was the grandmother in the cartoon and Greenspan's mentor. Arthur Burns, that was the head of the Fed, told Greenspan about the massive amounts of gold in the Grand Canyon that were being saved for after the crash. Of course, Alan Greenspan was the largest gold bug in the world in the 1960s, wrote an amazing paper called Gold and Economic Freedom, and then went on to write the computer programs to invent the electronic financial system. Crazy stuff, I know. But it does get to the fact that at some point we're going to have to mine that gold. And who will be mining it? Will it be private corporations or will it be the government? I don't know. They talk about it in here. Will the people try to develop new ways of obtaining flowers? Will they form corporations to explore the caves thoroughly in the hope of finding new entrances to colorland? Will local carpenters race to build ladders tall enough to reach the hole in the ceiling of the sunlit cave? Will engineers compete in developing new drilling methods to bore more holes in the ceiling to let it in more sunlight for a larger crop of flowers? And will the lure of simply being able to own as many flowers as one wants be enough to stimulate all the economic development? Or will the incentive of being able to sell flowers garnered by these new methods be an essential ingredient? Finally, should the mayor of Pebbleton announce that the town itself will undertake some of these projects, raising taxes to finance them? So should they nationalize it? Should the government be pulling this gold out? Will the town scientists and engineers start investing their time? This was all written before Bitcoin, before the cryptocurrency solution. I am on the side of Ron Paul. Ron Paul recently came out and said he doesn't mind Bitcoin. He believes in competing currencies, and that's what I believe in. I believe we should have Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, all the cryptocurrencies, all the gold and silver as money, all the fiat money. Everything should be competing on equal levels and with as little government involvement as possible. So no, regulators should be going away. They're criminals anyway. I don't think that'll happen, but they do. The only regulation should be over fraud. Absolutely regulate for fraud, but there shouldn't be any taxation on your labor either, which I think that'll go away. Remember, the income tax was not here before 1913. income tax was administered with the creation of the Federal Reserve. And it started out as pennies and then grew to the insane thing it is today. And it all goes to pay off the Queen of England, unfortunately. It's crazy. It is insane what is going on. And we are going to print money like it's going out of style and continue to do that. Anyway, that's your update. As we get closer and closer, I'll give more private road updates. But that's your update for now. Big Swear signing off.